Good day, everyone, and welcome to Thriving Through Change, the future of healthy, ready, and resilient nonprofits. I'm Shamis Pitts, founder and CEO of Pitts Leadership Consulting, PLC for short. Today is our final, we made it, Thriving Through Change webinar, which has been a three-part exploration of what it takes to build healthy, ready, and resilient nonprofits in a rapidly evolving world. You can say that again. So why are we here today? We want to discuss how org health, leadership behavior, and intentional strategy help nonprofits stay mission ready without sacrificing the people who power the work. We will uplift real lessons from the field based on past conversations that we've had during this series and offer practical guidance that you can discuss and consider within your own organizational context, because context is queen, as I like to say. So with that, I want to share a little bit with you about PLC. Some of you on the line know us, other folks were new. So we are a human capital consulting firm specializing in organizational health and business readiness. We help organizations build resilient leadership, healthy culture, and strong execution capabilities so that they can thrive through complexity and change. Our services span consulting, advising, training and facilitation, executive and leadership coaching on the individual basis and group and team. Our differentiators are our people, not just me, and our process. We partner with leaders to drive sustainable performance, combining executive experience, coaching expertise, data-informed change management, and learning and execution excellence and responsible innovation. Because that is a key right now in this world, right? Because I like to say, in an AI focused, let me point to the right side here, in an AI focused world, we strengthen human intelligence because organizations succeed when people lead well, collaborate deeply, and execute with purpose. And with that, I want to welcome today's powerhouse leader into the room, a very humble servant leader who gave me the side eye, I do have to say, when I decided to call this webinar Ask the Expert. So Kathryn Haslanger, welcome to the stage. Kathryn led JASA, one of New York's leading provider of aging services, reaching 40,000 older New Yorkers with social, recreational, health, housing, cultural, legal, and educational services for several years. And full disclosure, PLC had the honor and pleasure of collaborating with JASA on several engagements over the past 5 years. So welcome, Kathryn. Please take a moment to share a nugget or two about yourself that you would like us to know.
Thanks, Shamis. I really appreciate that introduction. I have a lot to be humble about, so that's why I gave you the side eye. A couple of nuggets I would share. I think first, and that are maybe useful context for this conversation. One is that I never imagined that I would be in a CEO role, that I would be leading a large organization. I was very happy in my nerdy, policy wonky advocacy kind of space. And I thought that's where I would make whatever contribution I could make. So it was kind of a surprise in some ways that we're having this conversation. I was talking to my son last night, and I was telling him about this webinar and that I was feeling a little nervous about it. And his first reaction, and he asked, what was it about? And I said, well, leadership and organizational resilience. And he said, oh, gee, Mama, I can't really help you. And can I just say, I love that his first impulse was that he was going to try to help me. I think that was really wonderful. And then he thought a minute, and then he said, Mom, tell them how you commandeered your entire family to help during that first Thanksgiving when people were still recovering from Hurricane Sandy.
Mm.
And I commandeered, that was his word, commandeered. So we can unpack that one later. But that is to say that when I stepped into the role, I did really embrace it. I did it with my whole heart and soul and mind. And I am now retired, or as someone said to me, you're not retiring, you're rewiring, which I kind of like that.
Mhm.
So that in this conversation, this isn't just about that experience, but also I worked in and had senior roles in a lot of human services, healthcare, different kinds of organizations over a very long career, legitimate gray hair here. And I'm really going to try to think about all of those things, not just my last role, but this is just me speaking. There's no organization, there's no label. It's just me.
Well, just you. I appreciate your being here. And I think, I mean, not that I think, I know um, that you're going to bring all of you to the conversation. That's why we get along, because we're real talk. I think we had a really powerful working relationship because, we both believe in growth mindset and well-being, and potential to understanding risk, but also the reward and the possibility, right? Because every organization and every situation, it's a mix of both the reward and the risk,
Right,
and
right.
being able to have real conversations about that, to then explore what a solid next step looks like. And I think is just, there's a lot of alignment in that. And I think that's why we have always had very textured, layered, and nuanced conversation to help move move forward, right? And figure out
Yeah.
what the next step look like. So that's what we're going to do today. So I know your thoughts are your own, and you're going to bring us the nuggets. So our roadmap, so thank you. Our roadmap for the next 55 minutes, right? We're going to do a quick poll to get a sense of who's in the room and what's top of mind. Then we're going to ground in the conversation and insights, as I mentioned, from the past couple of sessions. Then we're going to dive in. We'll open up space for questions, and then we're going to wrap with next steps. And mind you, the first couple of go rounds, right? We have a whole bunch of questions. If there's something that we feel that I feel that we should tackle in the moment, I'll address it. You can upvote questions if you like, and you can sit there and simply listen and do whatever it is you're doing. Because, I don't believe in multitasking, but I know most people are doing a couple things while they're listening to webinars. Um, yeah, so thanks to those of you who submitted your questions in advance. And, if you tried to put an AI note taker in here, you're going to be out of luck. It was probably booted, because you'll get a copy of the recording. So there you go. So now we're going to jump into the quick poll. Judy, get us going, right? We just want to understand your role because that gives context. We also want to know what is keeping you up at night, and also how ready are you to meet the moment at your organization. So take a moment, because again, that stuff's going to help us be present to what your needs are. And we're only going to keep this open for a couple minutes. So if you want to do nothing, then we're going to keep it moving anyway. Just saying. Many of y'all didn't just meet me, so you know how this goes. All right, we got some exec leadership in the room. Folks are navigating. Ooh, okay, stuff's coming in. Bop, 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 bop.
Who have we got?
We have some consultant advisors, about a third. We have executive leaders, about a third, a few ops in HR, a few program. Biggest challenge right now, leadership transitions, organizational change is the hot topic. Limited staff capacity and team fatigue is tied with funding instability. And then there's a little bit about morale and well-being, and the needs of the community are growing.
Yeah.
And when we look at readiness for change, folks are just trying to keep up for the most part. Some folks are taking steps towards, yeah, a lot of just trying to keep up.
Yeah.
Taking steps, aware but not aligned. And one person's thriving. So I'll give you right? It's
Yeah,
one day at a time. All right.
right.
Thank you so much. We can close the poll, right? There's not one right answer, not one right way, right? And just so ideally, our hope is that you will identify one practical step action that you can take or like a discussion you can have to help yourself and your organization move forward, right? That's my coaching hat on. Oftentimes, we can get overwhelmed by the largesse of something, and being able to start with one solid step, I like to say hashtag start small, can really be a game changer. All right. So the insights. So common themes from our previous speakers. There's five of them. One, nonprofits are navigating disruption that is structural, not occasional. The speed of policy shifts, funding volatility, and tech adoption has made strategic clarity and internal capacity building essential. Second item, healthy orgs start with people, no surprise there. When communication is clear, expectations are aligned, and well-being is supported, teams can sustain performance without burning out. Third item of note, leaders are finding that resilience requires intentional planning. Monthly audits, scenario conversations, and prioritization help orgs anticipate risk rather than simply being in reacting to crisis mode. Fourth item, partnerships matter more than ever. Shared systems, collaborating across sectors, and trusted relationships allow organizations to move farther and faster than when operating alone, which is, nice. I love that African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And finally, thriving organizations focus on stability, mobility, and long-term impact. They help communities advance. They do not create dependency or cycle through crises as a default model. And again, that was based on the perspective of the folks that we had in the first two sessions. And I'm excited now to continue to build and explore those topics with you, Kathryn. So let's get started. All right.
Okay.
All righty. So with that, we asked the folks in the room what was keeping them up at night. So I ask you the same question as you look across the landscape that nonprofits are currently operating in.
So for nonprofits, it's always something. It's never placid. It's never predictable. That just is, it goes with the territory and with mission-driven organizations. But I think in this time, looking out in the communities that we serve and how many people are having a really hard time making ends meet with food and economic insecurity, with extraordinary fear and pain in those communities. And that extends also often to our staff, because a lot of the people doing the work are living next to, look a lot like the communities where we're serving. So there's that level of things keeping me up. And then at the same time, at the organizational level, people are trying to figure out how to deal with cuts that just came out of nowhere, funding disruptions, funding delays, where there was just no hint, no clue, and all of a sudden, that's what they have to deal with no opportunity to plan or prepare. And if you are in the blessed space where you're not dealing with that, you're looking at, if not this budget cycle, then the next one, when city and state government are going to be having to come to terms with some very difficult financial choices, and just not knowing what the ripple effects are going to be. And those are, that's not just, my concern. Their Center for the Urban Future is calling these the most severe threats in a generation.
Mm,
The city council speaker, Adrian Adams, and the Human Services Council had an op-ed where they were calling these existential threats. So there's a reason folks are losing sleep.
mm. Thank you for that. I know during an earlier conversation, as we were preparing, because that's what we do, uh,
We do.
we were talking about whether or not, or exploring whether or not this was distinct. So some of the data that you share does sound like this is an extreme point in time, right? Existential crisis, generational crisis. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, is this the most extreme we've experienced in a long time, or have we seen this before? I know we were debating that.
Yeah. So, and my first reaction was, "Oh, it's the worst," and I'm clutching my non-existent pearls. Um, and upon reflection, I think, like widen the aperture, right? It's
Mm,
not take a little bit of a broader view. It has never been a good time in many of the communities where nonprofits are working. And
mm,
if you think about the work of somebody like Arlene Geronimus and her book Weathering, about the physiological impact of trauma and stress from racism and from being marginalized, if you think about Andrea Elliott had this book, The Invisible Child, about a family that was caught in the crosshairs of poverty, homelessness, and the foster care system. I mean, it's not like there was some good, calm time
mm,
back in the day. And then thinking about there's a book that came out recently that looks at New York from in the mid to late 80s. And that was HIV/AIDS, homelessness, crack, financial crisis. So that's, that's not just a crisis, that's poly crisis, right? That's a whole bunch of things hitting
mm.
people and communities and systems all at once. So, is this different and the worst? I don't know. I think the thing that's different, though, that's worth
Yeah,
calling
yeah,
out
yeah.
is that this is all hitting us when we are already really tired. COVID was exhausting.
Yeah.
And that it took so much out of us on so many levels. We did amazing work, no doubt about it, but it came at a real cost. And so we're coming into this period not exactly with maybe not exactly a deep reservoir of
To
energy
pull
and
from.
strength.
Right. Hmm. I'm just chewing on that. I was just thinking back to how many times when I would we've spoken in the past, and I would say, Kathryn, you're reading so much about trauma. Take a pause and read about some joy. Bal- Balance it out, right? But yeah, but that's how you stay informed. And I think that's why you have a particular lens when you think about what it takes from a right a
Right,
from a health perspective to show up and support
right,
other people, right? I mean,
right,
I talk so much about in the work that we do at PLC, right? Leading self before you lead other and lead organization. That if I mean, and I'm not just talking about the, put on mask. I think the whole right, put on your mask before you put on others' masks. I think it's just an oversimplification of um, what it really entails to operate not just from a place of like self-care or like understanding your needs, but being able to then advocate and demonstrate, to advocate for yourself in order to get the support, resources, whatever that you need to do what you need to do. Um, but anyway, I'm going down the rabbit hole in my head. Okay. So speaking of which, right, oftentimes, I mean, when we talk about organizational health, right, it's the ability to align people, purpose, processes, outcomes, performance in a way that strengthens trust and clarity and collaboration in support of delivering against a mission. And resilience to me is, right, not just being able to, there's two sides to it. It's like when you get knocked down, you have to get back up and you have to figure out how to move forward, right?
right,
Resilience
right.
to me is like navigating both things together. So when you think about resilience at an organizational level, what does that mean to you in today's environment?
I think building on what you're saying, I
Mm,
think it's figuring out what's the most important thing to do and making sure, finding ways to keep doing that no matter what, and
mm,
making sure that you have staff, that you have a team who feels and who feel supported, and also they probably need to feel a little bit inspired to be able to kind of stick with you through that getting banged around through hard decisions and setbacks, because you need them to feel your support so that they keep their creativity and their commitment in the game with you. And
mm,
that, to me, that's what makes a resilient organization.
mm.
um,
Thank you. So what's important that you said focus on what's important. So I just want to be in that for a second.
in terms of the mission that you have for what you're doing in the community, and also the work, that the support that needs to happen for the people who are doing the work. Those
Mm,
are both of those aspects of things that are important. And I think part of that is also is telling people the truth, right? I mean, leveling with people
mhm,
um, about the environment that you're in or the changes that you're navigating, and at the same time also giving people hope that you're going to have an impact, you're going to figure this out, you're working through this. And I think you can do both of those things and do them. I think a person can do both of those things and do them in an authentic way, and then that really then gives the organization the ability to keep
mm.
moving.
Thank you. So building on that, next question, which you may or may not choose to build on that, because one could argue that it's related, right? What initiatives or practices have you seen that strengthen organizational health and employee well-being?
Um, I mean, the most important thing, and I think I probably already said this, is the most important thing is that people have to feel safe, and they have to feel safe in bring forward information about the gaps, about problems, about the things that are going wrong. And part of, I think, creating that environment is doing whatever you can do to show genuine appreciation for the
Mm,
challenges that somebody's facing. It's not just saying thank you for your professionalism or whatever, but it's really, I know, I've seen you, I've listened to you, I know what it takes to do this work, and I'm genuinely grateful to you for what you're doing. I'm appreciating the challenges that you're taking on, and
mm,
I think doing that is really an important part of building that culture, um, so that people do feel safe to raise issues and also to bring ideas forward. And I think that's really important to employee well-being. And I think one way that you can be real about doing that is genuinely looking at, are there things that the organization can stop doing? Are
mm,
there requirements that we've put on ourselves that they served us at one point but they don't anymore? Are there practices that really are outdated, or that there's a new way of thinking or a new technology that we can get rid of that? Looking for ways to reduce the burden,
mm.
free up energy for the things that are the reason why people do these jobs. I mean, I think that's a really important dimension of employee well-being
Yeah.
and organizational strength as well.
I really like that because so many times when I'm talking to folks, when they're adding new stuff, and I'm like, well, what are you sunsetting?
Right.
And they're like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? I was like, and I'm always like, okay,
Yeah.
well,
You can't
while,
just add and add and add.
I
Yeah.
mean, while we can say, I mean, part of my learning when I was getting certified as a coach was exploring the concept of time being infinite. And there's an abundance of time, right? There's one perspective, right? That
Right.
There's the other
Right.
thing about time scarcity.
Right.
And I truly believe there's an opportunity cost of time. If you're doing this, you're choosing, right? You're choosing to be here.
Right.
Folks are choosing to be in the room right now. They're not someplace else.
Right.
Um, so that means something else isn't happening. And
Right.
so there's always trade-offs, but so many times I find that folks don't seriously consider in a thoughtful way.
It's a discipline. It's a discipline. It's not just checking the box. Oh, did I think about that? It's like, no, you have to really do the work to figure it out.
Yeah, because then the alternative is that some things get cut that are actually aligned with moving the mission forward, but it may, right? So how, I
Right.
mean, how might you, I mean, this gets back to the scenario planning that's come up in other conversations, right? Like, what does it take to have that meaningful conversation?
Trust. People have to know that they can, uh, as the leader, you're probably not going to be the person who can figure it out. You need to really, ask a lot of questions and learn by asking and really listening. And if people think that there's going to be a price to pay for giving you bad news,
Mm.
then you're not going to hear it. You're not going to hear what you need to hear. You're not going to hear how you need to pivot. And that's it, that
Yeah.
it all comes back to that.
Yeah, somebody asked me to comment specifically on what organizational behaviors does PLC see as a strong predictor to help people thrive through change. And the things that came up for me outside of the two things that came up for me were making sure that I am or organizations leaders are being active listeners in conversations, but also ensuring that there's sufficient seats at the table, right? Are the appropriate, I don't want to say the right, are the
Right,
appropriate voices giving feedback and possibly and understanding what the challenge is and have the opportunity to get context and give feedback? And is there an assumption being made about who needs to be at the table?
right,
Right? Because sometimes the most important information is out there, but that
right,
person is not a part of the conversation at
right.
all. So for me, it's really evaluating information sources, who's part of the conversation, when are they a part of the conversation, um, and when there's a discussion, are you actually actively listening to what's being shared?
Well, I might add on to that.
Mm.
As a consultant, it could be a little dicey, but you have the ability to observe the way the leader is with working with their team, and you have the ability to, notice whether there are things that are creating stress
Mm.
or that are undermining a sense of trust, that it may be completely unintentional, not aware, but just you may pick up, gee, people really are tense about the fact that they're going to get a phone call day or night and that they've got to be able to respond, and just and uncomfortable about bringing forward boundaries or what. I mean, those are things that an outside observer and can see and maybe comment on in a way that is can make the whole thing work better for everybody.
Mm. Thank you. True. And so I know there's consultants on the line, where that also just having that insight would be helpful. So thank you for that. So there was a question that had come in advance, building on what we were just talking about practices. The question was, what strategies have you found most effective for maintaining organizational resilience financially? We talked about the culture side. I mean, there was financially and culturally
Right,
we addressed,
right.
um, during periods of major uncertainty.
So the answer that everybody always gives to that is, well, diversify your revenue streams. That's true, but I think it's really important to say what you're doing when you're diversifying your revenues, or what one needs to do when thinking about diversifying revenues is understanding that you're not walking away from risk, you're just picking different baskets of risk,
Mm.
and that there's pretty much nothing that's risk free. Um, we We had some interesting examples of, in one case being in a partnership with an organization that we was a very, well-financed, solid. We had done a ton of due diligence, and and seemed like we were really mission aligned, and it was all going really well. And then they filed for bankruptcy. Uh, So yeah, we had diversified revenue away from completely relying on city contracts and just picked up a different flavor of risk.
Mm,
So that just understanding that there's just understand, eyes wide open, right? Do your diligence, understand the different flavors of risk that are out there, and anticipating, what the responses could be, and just making the decision mindfully in that way. I mean, there's some things that nonprofits are doing that have a translation into there could be a market for it.
mm.
But that, again, that then is tied to economic cycles and brings a different set of risks for it. So it's just being, clear-eyed, I guess, about how you're the sources of stability that you're seeking, or the different risks that you're taking on.
Thank you. So, next question.
Okay.
What misconceptions, if any, do you think that nonprofits have about readiness? And so folks, when I say readiness, I'm thinking about navigating change and challenge and disruption, understanding that it's just part of the world, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not like I embrace change. I'm not probably not an average human in that, but recognizing that there's always something different and being nimble and adapting to that. So I just wanted to make sure I give folks that context because sometimes I talk about readiness and it means something to me, but I want to make sure folks are with me. So what misconceptions do nonprofits have about the concept of readiness, if any?
So, I mean, a couple of things I want to say about that are in sort of different buckets of lines of thought.
Okay.
I think I don't know whether I would call this a misconception so much as just sort of starting from a point of saying nonprofit leaders are painfully aware that because of the strictures of government funding, we are not able to compensate our staff at the level that's really commensurate with what they do, their skill with their value. And so the things that, like the Human Services Council, the Just Pay campaign, those things are trying to bring equity for human services workers. There's a lot more to do. So when you think about readiness, the kind of the first thing in your head is, but the people that I'm asking to be ready are already so stressed. What am I really doing here? I just kind of have to say that. I think that because that's so present, and it was so present in my mind, or I think in a lot of people's minds, we then don't really give adequate value or importance to the steps that we can take to show appreciation, to strengthen people, to make them feel supported,
Mm,
that aren't completely tied to compensation and money. And people are hardwired to be seen and heard. That's what people need. And so I mean, that's making that something that is genuine in the organization is something that really builds to nimbleness, to
mm,
flexibility. And it's not just talking about it and talking about what individuals need, but really um, modeling it for ourselves, and making sure that the organization is making the space for it to
mm,
happen.
mm.
Does that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So building on that, right, what shift had the biggest impact on any one of the past organizations that you were in to navigate change?
So I think, this is not a paid announcement, but I think one of the things that was really helpful was the work that you and your team did with us at JASA when I was there, to build the trust, to have hard conversations, to have honest conversations, and to help us build the trust, and also to give people the tools to do that. And I think having the leadership really present and fully engaged, so that people, it wasn't just some training thing that everybody had to take, but we were really there. We were participating very, in a very genuine way.
Mm.
Um, I think that was really important, because if people don't feel like they can raise problems without facing repercussions, then you just cut off a really important source of information, intelligence, and about how to close gaps, about the potential need to pivot, right? And you've really cut off intelligence, but you've also cut off commitment. If people don't feel like their voice is going to be a voice that's heard, not to say that they're always going to win the argument and that you're always
Mm.
going to say, okay, yeah, sure, no
Yeah.
problem,
Yeah.
but that people are really heard. I think that, and being able to have that as part of the environment, and being able to have honest conversations was really essential to that. So there.
Mm. Well, thank you. So I guess building off that, for any other folks in the room who are supporting, right? We had a question about, as an outsider, how do they support
Mm-hmm.
clients through change?
I think so if you're coming to this as an outsider and as a consultant with whatever your practice is, just remembering that if you've seen one nonprofit, you've seen one nonprofit, right? Lots of different flavors. And it's great to have, a playbook, but it's
Mm.
really, really important to start by really asking questions and listening to the answers and really probing, so that you really understand the particular flavor dynamics, cross currents in this organization. And that's very much the way, I mean, kudos to you, because that really is how you and your team
Mm.
were working. And that it wasn't just giving us something off the shelf, it was really coming in to understand what we were struggling with and how we were struggling with it. And you certainly have a methodology, you have an approach, but it was really tailored to our circumstances. And I think that, and that, along with just encouraging you encouraging everybody to ask questions and not make assumptions.
Mm.
I think that also was really important. And then, that point that I made earlier about, the bonus points for taking on the dicey role of maybe gently pointing out some things that the leader might have been unwittingly doing that were undercutting what
Mm.
they were trying to accomplish. That's
Yeah. It's co-creation, right? And
Yeah,
collaboration.
yeah,
So if a leader, so for the folks on the call who are in the trenches in a nonprofit right now, I mean, it sounds like you've been building the business case for investing in people and systems to support.
yeah.
So what if, I mean, what do you think decision makers need to know if to help make that business case?
So, I mean, I think, you actually have your hands on a lot of the data from different kinds of nonprofits and from industry that you were able to share to help make that business case. I think, just footnote, it's frustrating that we have to keep making that business case, because people tell us as nonprofits to act more like businesses, and businesses certainly know that they have to make these infrastructure investments. So act like a business, but don't have the investment capacity of a business or the infrastructure capacity of that. Those two things don't go together, and that's just a continuing source of frustration. And the funder who says, oh, that's, I'm going to pay very little in indirect or overhead or whatever, because that's wasteful. I mean, that stuff really makes me crazy. But so I had a opportunity recently to ask a former high level city official what advice they would give to nonprofit
Okay.
leaders on this point.
Okay.
Okay. And I will share. um, that their answer was sort of how do you get the resources you need to do the work that you need to do in order to do the work that you want to do, right? That's kind of the form of the question. And so it was also from a power, like this is somebody who's been in city government, who's been making those kind of choices, budget decisions, funding decisions, right? And what they said was, they said, it's, as a nonprofit leader, what you really want to do is align yourself with the funder or the public official and what it is they need to do. What is it that they are trying to accomplish? Describe to them the way you are their dream date, the way you can take a big bite out of their problem, the way you can be a really effective partner in meeting those goals.
Mm.
And then be just clear about what it's going to take in a very straightforward way. And that, I think that was really, and to the extent that you can pull in the kind of evidence, Shamis, that you pull in from other engagements, from the research, from the literature, that's good. But if you put it in really solid terms of, this is where we can go together, this is what I need, and why, in order to go there with you and to get you there. That's a different kind of a conversation than a sort of a, you
Mm.
know,
Yeah,
please.
it's a what's in it
It's,
for them,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So I thought that was interesting. I just,
Mhm.
align on the goals, be really respectful about, also, you may need to close some gaps in their knowledge, right? I mean, it's really, I mean, I started my career in city government. It's really hard to work in government. Those are really crazy demanding jobs, tough jobs. And I'm in no way minimizing that. They are different than the job that we have as nonprofit leaders, right?
Mm.
I mean, a commissioner doesn't have to make payroll. They don't have to worry about cash flow. They don't have that. Maybe they may not have the freedom to envision, okay, what is the information I really need to make better decisions? And so let's design a system, because there may be some whole other agency that's responsible for doing stuff like that. And
Mhm.
that's like not, in their lane. So they're in a very stressful, demanding, different world. And just gently, respectfully, maybe, still closing the gap there
Mhm.
on that difference in knowledge and experience, could be beneficial.
That was a nugget. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, that was solid. Yeah. I'm sure folks on the line will agree. Um, so I'm looking here because there's some things that we've touched on already. Dot, 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 dot. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about culture, right? You can't talk about organizational health without talking about culture. They say what culture eats strategy for lunch.
or
Um,
breakfast
or
even.
just,
Yeah.
so, kill me. You funny. See, aren't you having fun? So when you think about, I mean, so much of this comes about down to accountability and how do we reinforce accountability
Yeah.
from a place that is also so much of what, I like to talk about from a place of compassion, right?
Yeah.
Um, how do you navigate those two things?
That's really hard. And if you don't think it's hard, then there's something missing, I think.
Mm.
Um, and I think, in order to figure out how to navigate those things, again, you have to start with an honest conversation, right? You have to be really, when there's been a gap, when there's been a problem, um, you want to start with an honest conversation and really listening to understand from the other person's point of view. And I guess um, I was in this role with my whole everything. And as my son said, I commandeered my family. Um, but at the same time, it's really important to recognize that people have complicated lives. And sometimes there are things that are really absolutely more pressing than whatever was on the top of my to-do list for a person to do. So
Mm,
there's, understanding that and not understanding that. Um, Asking whether it's a coaching opportunity, if it's a chance for the person really to learn and to grow. If that's part of if that's what needs to be brought to bear, or when there's a red flag, when it's really like you've got a real accountability problem, you're going to have to do something about it, drastic measures. It's when the person just doesn't, when there's a gap, that when they're just like not acknowledging that there
mm,
was a problem or that whatever happened was really out of bounds. That's kind of, then that's taking you to the ultimate accountability, which is, when you have to part ways and
mm,
separate the person from the organization.
mm,
And I don't think, I mean, I've certainly done my share of those. Um, Speaking of sleepless nights, the night before you do one of those is the worst.
mhm,
Um, I think there were probably times when people thought I should have done it that I didn't. Um, but I think there's a lot in balancing accountability and compassion. There's a lot that you have to take into account um, about the level of disruption that you're going to cause and what else is going on in that moment. And whether, the short-term disruption is going to be worth what you think is going to be the long-term gain.
mm,
I think also, taking the long view of what somebody's contributions and strengths have been or can be. And sometimes those are evident to the person in the leadership role, and they may not be completely transparent and visible to everybody else.
mm,
But kind of taking the long view and the whole organization view, it's those are that all comes into a play. And those are, you have to be clear about what you need. You have to be clear when you haven't gotten it, and then you have to understand all of the nuance of the situation to figure
mm,
out what's the best way to really establish accountability and make progress
mm.
going forward.
Thank you for
That
that.
was probably a longer answer than you wanted, but
I had no set time
oh,
limit.
good. I didn't have a character limit. I didn't have a character limit on my answer.
No.
Good. I don't miss character limits. That's one of the things I don't miss.
What I was thinking when you were sharing was that, when you're in I mean, I think everybody's a leader, that, with the ability to influence one way or the other, up or down, side
Yeah.
to side. Um,
Yeah.
but when you're in when you have formal positional authority, there's a lot of layers and nuance.
Yeah.
And we take in the data and we do our best. And we're human and we don't always, sometimes we make the mistakes. Um,
Yeah.
we're not perfect. So one of the questions that had come in was for aspiring leaders who aren't in the C-suite or who don't have higher level of positional authority. What can they do from where they sit to strengthen resilience?
That's an important question, because I think there are things that everybody can do, and in some ways, it a little bit goes back to that conversation that I had with the former city official. That it's really, thinking from the perspective of your, you know, manager or team leader. What is it that they're trying to accomplish, and then talking to them about what is going to be important, the practices, the resources that are going to be important in order to be able to do that. So again, you're taking on their perspective and aligning with it, and thinking in a positive way about how you can help them get there. And I think if you can, in a constructive way, not in a, I'm gathering complaints way, get some input, get some feedback from colleagues test out your ideas, expand your perspective a little bit. That's going to help. I think also listening to what other organizational leaders are saying and seeing if there's a thread that really resonates with you that you can pick up and amplify and use that as a way so that you're saying yes and you're
Mm,
not saying make a lot, turn the other direction. You're saying yes and.
mm.
I think that also can be a positive way of making change and moving forward.
Thank you. I was remiss in seeing this question. We've touched on things, and I want to make sure I put a pin in it in case you want to add anything else. So we've referenced trust several times as we've been talking. What practices actually build trust in a way that's not performative, that would survive pressure, conflict, and inspire growth?
Being honest,
Hmm.
telling people the truth. Don't pretend that there's not a problem if there's a problem. Um, don't The no surprises rule, right? If there's something emerging, you need to talk about that. You don't just sort of keep it and then explode. Um, I think showing up when there's when there are times when I'm trying to figure out how to say this. It's for organizational leaders to be every day washing the windows is not a good use of your time because you need to be like leading the organization and looking out there ahead and whatever. And yet periodically it's a really good idea to like get down and wash some windows so that you know like what it feels like and what the obstacles are and how crusty the dirt is that people are
Yeah.
having to scrub. I think that's also part of it. And just and people, everybody has to do this in their own way, right? It's one of my very beloved former bosses said, everybody plays himself in this movie.
Mm. Yeah,
You
you like
just,
that
you've
one.
got it right. I know, I like to say that, right? Because you have to be your version of you. And my husband is an amazing leader. He is appalled at some of the things, some of my practices and some of the things that I do that would just be totally not, fit with him for him.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
that's it. It's got to be the real deal.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. So final question. I mean, we've touched on so many things. So when you think about the final piece of guidance that you want to give to folks that may help them if they're stretched thin or may help them through a time when they, need a lifeline or an inspiration to keep moving forward, to get up and move forward, what would that thing be?
So that's, oof. Um, I think what I would say is if you if you stay centered on the the mission, the communities you're trying to work in, and you are caring for and feeling connected to those communities and to the people doing the work. If you center yourself on that, then you can't go wrong. And
Mm,
that in the moment, if you think about a rubber band being really stretched, it can't flex, right? It's like this and it can't flex. So it's really important so that you can think creatively, so that you can relate to the people that are around you. You have to do things to replenish yourself. Whatever gives you joy, right? You need to put it in your calendar, treat it as your most protected meeting that nobody can mess with that space. What people said to me at various points when I had caregiving roles was you cannot pour from an empty cup.
mm,
So
mhm.
that making the space to do that is really important, and to know that we've we've done hard things, we've been through hard times, um, and we're going to do it again. We can do it, and you can just really take heart from the commitment and the creativity of the people that you're doing this with and for. And so that's how you get moving.
And then you end with that face. You crack me up. Thank you, Kathryn, so very much for all of your insights today. See, you survived. You made it. Wasn't so bad spending this time with me. So with
I
that,
love spending time with you.
hopefully I'll end up on the final slide. Okay, so with that, thank you so much. I hope all of you were able to identify a nugget that you can put into practice to help you move forward um, as you're thinking about year end into next year. Um, Sometimes, right, it's important to just take a beat, create some space to reflect on this conversation and in other things that you've experienced this year to think about how you want to move forward. How do you want to close out and then move forward into the new year? I always say when folks start reflecting on resolutions in January, that's a little late. Take advantage of some of the quiet time in December to reflect, celebrate the wins, and think about how you want to take those things to move forward. So right now you see a QR code if you want to book a strategy call with us at PLC because we're here. We know resilience is not about it's about alignment in what you're doing, what you're choosing to do, the people you're around, yourself, your teams, your org. We want to help strengthen leadership capacity so you stay grounded and to support reinforcing your organization, creating shared norms so that your org can stay healthy and to figure out if change needs to happen. Are they transparent and psychologically safe in order to do the work? So, right, that's our job to co-create opportunity for you all to do the work that matters. So with that, I say thank you, Kathryn. You know, you're one of my favorites in the world. You can't get rid of me. We get to continue to just be thought partners, and I just really appreciate what you bring and what you contribute to this world that we're in as being a concerned citizen. And to all of you, again, have a peaceful and joyful holiday. Take good care. Thanks so much for joining.